Hello and welcome to MakerMark. I'm Mark and I make things and stuff. Yeah, that's a good tagline. To start this channel off, I wanted to give myself a challenge. I was gonna have 1 week to make something with all of these little leather scraps that I just can't stop collecting. Leatherworkers know how it is. Just 1 week and only scraps. I'm not gonna go back on any part of that statement later on in the video. Nope. For this project, I chose these two pieces. I had a specific idea in mind when I first grabbed them from the scrap bin, and I just never got around to it. So now I'm getting around to it. I'm not sure what these were originally supposed to be. Probably key fobs or something, but I'm not going to make key fobs. Key fobs are dumb. My idea here was to make them into a couple little pouches. I've always wanted to make little drawstring pouches for myself as an accessory, so now I'm doing it. Now, the normal way to make one of those little pouches is just a rectangular strip in the middle with a circle or half circle for the gusset. But clearly these are not rectangular strips, and I like the idea of them being an unusual shape, so I didn't want to cut them. Also, it's because I can never do anything the normal way. I always gotta make it more complicated than it needs to be, or else it's not interesting to me. I don't know why I'm like this. So, I gathered some reference images in Photoshop and started sketching ideas. I thought it would look cool to cut them in half and make them like a twin mirrored set. At first I thought I was gonna wrap it around like this, but then I realized it was going to be way too small. Then I had the idea to just add some sort of decoration to the top and put a snap there, though I couldn't really decide on a design for it here. I'll think of one later, you'll see. And then there was the gusset, which was a bit difficult to figure out, but I'll get to that later. Oh yeah, and a belt loop too. So I had my pieces and my plan, and it was time to get started. And I immediately got distracted. Look at her. He's so fat. I'm not sure how well you can see it in the video, but there was a bit of scarring at the top of one of the pieces. I tried to arrange it in the back and then realized that the top part covered it up anyway, so there wasn't much point in that. Whoops, whatever. The next step was to cut them in half and cross-stitch the two pieces together. But they were a bit too thin for that, so I glued them to another strip of scrap and then stitched them together. While I was waiting for the glue to dry, I moved on to the gusset. I knew I couldn't do a full circle with this weird-shaped piece of scrap, so I tried doing it in halves, and I didn't have enough suede for that. But that's okay, I had an idea. If I used some other suede I had, I could cut it into fourths instead and patch them together. And with that, I had a full gusset. The glue was dry, so now it was time to punch the holes. Punching holes sucks, no one wants to watch that. Time for stitching, just as tedious as punching holes, but a little bit more interesting to watch. Or it would be interesting to watch if I actually filmed it right. That kind of aesthetic video only works with the thing in the same place every time. Idiot. Now that the gluing and hole punching and stitching is done, what do we do next? Oh, more gluing and hole punching and stitching. Yep, that's what leatherworking is most of the time. A lot of it is long and boring. It doesn't make good YouTube content, does it? By the way, quick tip that I'll eventually make into a longer and funnier video. If you think your stitches came out looking wonky despite punching the holes perfectly straight, Hammer your stitches. It'll fix them, trust me. Look at a side-by-side comparison, before and after. Almost looks machine stitched. You're welcome. Now I just glued the gusset on, and it's time for more stitching. And stitching, and stitching, and stitching, and stitching, and stitching, stitching, and stitching. And look, we're done. Hey, it looks like an actual pouch now, but I still gotta make the top bit where the snap goes. I drew out the design I came up with on some tracing paper, and I cut it out, but I didn't really like it. Butter does what he wants. He is constantly digging in. Excuse me. I'm busy here. I don't even care. I went through a couple different designs before finally deciding on one. Hey, remember how I said in the beginning that I only wanted to use scraps for this? And how I wasn't going to go back on that at any point in the video? This is the part where I go back on that. The piece that I wanted to use for this ended up not quite being big enough again, so I had to cut into my nice newer stuff. I think what I had was 3 ounce, maybe not. Somehow I still don't get these conversions, and I have to look up the chart every time. Anyway, continuing the half-color theme, I dyed half of it red and just used a paintbrush. I felt like it needed more, so I added a little stamp to each of them. Then I thought that still wasn't enough, so I added a border and some metallic acrylic paint to match the hardware, off camera. R.I.P. to the paintbrush I fished out of the garbage years ago. I would say that you served me well, but that would be a lie. Now we got more hole punching. It's bigger this time, though. I made a belt loop and added lacing off camera, and with that, it's time for the reveal. Final thoughts. I lied. It actually took me 2 weeks. Overall, I'm super happy with how these came out. I'm glad I decided to make them into a matching opposite pair. Partway through, I was doubting myself about the strip on the side, but I trusted the process, and it turned out really nice, I think. I'm absolutely going to wear these to my next Renfest. But as happy as I am with these, I always have complaints about my own work. This is the eternal curse that plagues every artist. The only way to break this curse is by learning not to care, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. Though as far as complaints go, I only have a couple problems with these. Problem number 1, I should have used actual lace. Instead, I just cut thin strips of whatever I had and hoped it would work out. It did not. It's too stiff and made it lay a little bit weird and stick out weird and not tie right. The bigger problem, for some reason, I don't have the ability to set snaps right. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I just can't do it. So it ended up being loose, and it kind of comes off. It doesn't really close right. But that's fine, no one can tell from a distance. Update a year later. I did end up wearing them to that year's Renfest, and it was great. Here are some pictures for you. Also, there was a guy who was probably tipsy and definitely bisexual who told me I had Inigo Montoya vibes. And I don't think I'll ever get a compliment better than that in my entire life. I'm holding on to that one. I love you, random Ren Fair guy. Also, I changed the strips here to some soft deerskin lace, and It's a lot better. It actually ties now. Though the color doesn't match as well. Whatever. I didn't end up changing the snaps, even though I said I would fix the snaps. They're fine. They held up. They occasionally came undone. Slight annoyance, whatever. But overall, a pretty good build. I should have gone a little higher on the stitching in the back here. They kind of came, or as you can see, the string is kind of coming loose. So maybe they'll fix that later in the future. Probably not again. But overall, a good build. I like these pouches, and obviously a lot of people complimented them, so they did look good. If you like this video, you know how YouTube works. You can subscribe if you want. My coffee shop is in the description below, and you can either buy a thing or leave me a tip. Okay, that's it for the video then. Bye!